Hey, all. I'm doing this live in case anybody wants to jump in, but I needed to get this out there as an alert, so to speak, because I know not everyone is out there on X all day long looking for news. And I really don't want you to miss this. By you, I mean parents, concerned citizens who've been watching the gender theory confusion stuff and who are paying attention right now to the lawsuit that's underway against the state of Tennessee that is trying to ban medicalized treatments for minors. So Colin Wright has put this out, and so have a few other people, but I think he's done it in a way that makes it easy for me to speak to immediately. There is a bombshell article in the New York Times, and I'll go through some of it with you quickly, that reveals that Joanna Olson Kennedy, a prominent gender doctor who received millions in funding from the NIH, has withheld her data on puberty blockers, fearing that the lack of positive results might fuel political attacks and prompt bans on youth gender treatment. So again, this might bear on this lawsuit. The truth is not political, but concealing it certainly is. Absolutely. I mean, first of all, taxpayers paid for this research. Secondly, we're talking about children's lives. Never, ever should results be withheld. First of all, let me just continue this and then I'll get back to because I mean, few things leave me feeling like white hot rage, but this is. If the data shows no positive effects of puberty blockers on children's mental health, and that seems to be what it shows, while at the same time stunting their development and harming their future fertility, then these treatments should be banned. At a minimum, they should be immediately halted, like stop until we figure this out, right? The Supreme Court should be informed of these findings to help them make an informed decision. Withholding the state is a political act that will harm children. I could not agree more. So my 2 cents about this weaponization of the results. What's been weaponized for the past however many years that this has been going on? Parents' emotions, fear that their children will commit suicide if they don't undergo these treatments. The relationship with the child, custody has been weaponized. Our schools and curriculum has been weaponized against parents to promote this as totally harmless. People have had been beaten up, been attacked, had death threats. Doctors have lost their licenses. You name it. Therapists have been driven right out of their field because they don't want to just rubber stamp this. And for this woman to first of all, to take taxpayer dollars to fund her research, and then to say, well, I'm not going to publish it because I don't want to be weaponized. It absolutely should be weaponized. If that's what we're calling it now. If we're talking about presenting the truth, in particular to the Supreme Court and anybody else who needs to know what is the latest research. There are people making arguments right now about this should be banned in support of laws that states have passed to protect children. Isn't the first order of business do no harm? We're talking about children, minor children. Informed consent means you have all the information about the potential risks and benefits. If there is research that shows that it's not quite the slam dunk that we've been led to believe, that it may not even be a treatment for what ails these children. So let me quickly go through, because I don't have a lot of time and I'm sure you don't either, what the research shows. So I'm going to just switch over to the article itself. A U.S. study on puberty blockers goes unpublished because of politics, a doctor says. The leader of this is the New York Times. The leader of the long-running study said that the drugs did not improve mental health in children with gender distress and that the finding might be weaponized by opponents of the care. You're damn straight. Damn straight. Why not? We need a force equalizer. Parents, there are parents right now in custody battles over this kind of nonsense. They could lose custody of their children. Some already have in both divorce situations and to the state because of this kind of nonsense. People like Governor Tim Walz have passed laws in their state saying that if a parent won't affirm or allow their child to have these things, that they can take the child from the parents. Shouldn't this be relevant to that kind of thing? Parental rights are on the line here. An influential doctor, an advocate of adolescent gender treatment, said she had not published a long-awaited study of puberty-blocking drugs because of the charged American political environment. Like I said, we parents have had these theories and our child's well-being. Your child, would you rather have a live, son or a dead daughter or vice versa? That's been weaponized against us. implications of abuse if we don't go along with it. How is that not weaponizing? And then for politics, right? Because then it goes into the elections like these people don't want to take care of children. They want to hurt these children. Well, who wants to hurt them now? If this does hurt children, like we all thought it did, like we all know it does, then it's actually being weaponized against the parents, against the children for political reasons by not telling the truth. The Dr. Joanna Olson Kennedy began the study in 2015 as part of a broader multi-million-dollar federal project on transgender youth. She and colleagues recruited 95 children from across the country and gave them puberty blockers, which stave off the permanent physical changes like breasts and deepening voice that could exacerbate their gender distress known as dysphoria. The researchers followed the children for 2 years to see if the treatments improved their mental health. An older Dutch study had found that puberty blockers improved well-being, results that inspired clinics around the world to regularly prescribe the medications as part of what is now called gender-affirming care. But, and this is a big but, by the way, the American trial did not find a similar trend. Dr. Olson Kennedy said in a wide-ranging interview, puberty blockers did not lead to mental health improvements, she said, most likely because the children were already doing well when the study began. Well, that's a stretch, and we won't really know unless we look at her study, will we? They're in really good shape when they come in, as defined by whom? And they're in, said Dr. Olson Kennedy, who runs the country's largest youth gender clinic at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. No conflict of interest there. Do you see what's happening? The person who runs a clinic is conducting the research, and then she's saying, we don't need to release this research. Okay, that conclusion seemed to contradict an earlier description of the group in which Dr. Olson Kennedy and her colleagues noted that 1/4 of the adolescents were depressed or suicidal before treatment. In the 9 years since the study was funded by the National Institutes of Health, and as medical care for this small group of adolescents became a searing issue in American politics, Dr. Olson Kennedy's team has not published the data. Asked why, she said the findings might fuel the kind of political attacks that have led to bans of the youth gender treatments in more than 20 states, one of which will soon be considered by the Supreme Court. I do not want our work to be weaponized, she said. It has to be exactly on point, clear and concise, and that takes time. We're going to sit on it till after the election at the very minimum, until the Supreme Court has rendered a decision without all of the information it might need to render an informed decision about the care of minor children. Because at a minimum, even if, let's say, you might say, but Deb, what if it helps, one kid or two kids? What if it helps a few kids? But they're minors. I think we can agree they cannot give informed consent. They can't. And these do have permanent effect. No, you can just stop it. This is like a light switch. We can just, stop puberty, then turn it back on. No ill effects whatsoever. Lie. Okay. It's not reversible. So that alone should tell you that at a minimum, we should be talking about children, let's say, 16 and older, after they've undergone all kinds of therapy. There should be all kinds of things around it. So in the meantime, till y'all figure it out, they're going to have to go through puberty because there are lots of health benefits of going through puberty. And I really don't think that's tyrannical to make someone go through puberty. That's how it used to be done. We're now referring to puberty as like a disease that we're forcing someone to go through, because we want to pretend that children can consent when we don't even have all the data on what the long-term effects of this will be on the person they will become. This is just common sense, but let me continue. She said that she intends to publish the data, but that the team had also been delayed because of the NIH. The NIH had cut some of the project's funding, and now she's appealing for more money on top of it. I'm going to hold with all the data, and we can't even continue because we need more money. She attributed that cut to politics, which the NIH denied. The broader project has received $9.7 million in government support to date. Dr. Olson, again, conflict of interest. She runs a gender clinic. Can we just get that clear? Is one of the country's most vocal advocates. She served an expert witness in many legal challenges to the state ban. She said she was concerned the study's results could be used in court to argue that we shouldn't use blockers because it doesn't impact them, referring to transgender adolescents, as if there is such a thing. There might be some transsexual individuals, but no, there's no such thing as a transgender person. Other researchers, however, were alarmed by the idea of delaying results that would have immediate implications for families around the world. Yeah, I'm not a researcher. I'm alarmed. I understand the fear about it being weaponized, but it's really important to get the science out there, said Amy Tishelman, a clinical and research psychologist at Boston College, who was one of the study's original researchers. Dr. Tishelman also noticed that even if the drugs did not lead to psychological improvements, they may have prevented some of the children from getting worse. May have. Or maybe they have made them worse. Could we have a conversation about that perhaps? No change isn't necessarily a negative finding. You're putting drugs into the child that prevents puberty. No change is an argument to not take them in the world of me. Maybe you guys disagree, but I don't think we take drugs that do nothing except stop puberty, as if that's neutral. Like, they don't feel any better, but that's neutral. Yeah. We just don't know without more investigation. In the 1990s and 2000s, doctors in the Netherlands began studying a small group of children. So we go back to that study. But what we should also note is that the children in that study were very different, by the way. For those who struggled, the researchers began prescribing puberty blockers. For those who struggled, they had 70 children who were treated with the Dutch protocol, which means that they had been thoroughly assessed. We are not talking about an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old who goes, I'm a girl, I'm a boy. Okay, let's do this. Thorough assessment to make sure they had persistent dysphoria and supportive parents, that they did not have serious psychiatric conditions. Hello, no comorbidities that might interfere with treatment. Thoroughly assessed is the key here. This is the key. This is where we separate these sort of transsexual from this new gender woo stuff. Okay, that is more like the social contagion. And in kindergarten, they read me a book that if I like dressing up in high heels and dresses, that means I'm really a girl trapped in a boy's body. The kids back then were not taught that. Okay, that's a pretty big difference. These patients showed some psychological improvements after puberty blockers, fewer depressive symptoms, as well as significant declines in behavioral and emotional problems. All the patients chose to continue their gender transitions by taking testosterone or estrogen. The findings were highly influential even before they were published, and clinics around the world open to treat transgender, et cetera, et cetera. Then they go on and so forth. In a progress report submitted to the NIH, at that time, Dr. Olson Kennedy outlined her hypothesis of how the children would fare after 2 years on puberty blockers, that they would show decreased symptoms of depression, anxiety, trauma symptoms, self-injury, and suicidality, and increased body esteem and quality of life over time. That hypothesis does not seem to have borne out. They have good mental health on average, Dr. Olson Kennedy said in the interview. They're not in any concerning ranges, either at the beginning or after 2 years, but they're not getting better. And so on. And then anyway, this goes on. And I would just like to remind people of the report that I showed, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, the Conditions of Children report. This came out of California School Boards Association. First federal survey of trans students, 72% feel hopeless. 1 in 4 tried suicide. The first nationally representative survey of LGBTQ youth has found that 3.3% of U.S. high schoolers identify as transgender and 2.2% is questioning. These gender nonconforming students report alarmingly high rates of depression, suicidality, and in-school victimization. So I'm only bringing this up because Dr. Olson Kennedy talked about, well, they came into the puberty thing and they were doing really well. Okay. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. I want to see a definition of they were doing fine or they weren't doing any worse or whatever, because while obviously these kids are not all on puberty blockers, so let's be clear, this is research of just high school kids. So we don't know how many or probably very few are on puberty blockers. But the simple fact is you're going to need to show me that the kids in your trial or that kids in general who do this are doing pretty well to start with, or that they've gone through anything even resembling the original Dutch protocol. Now that your results are not bearing fruit, your hypothesis is not bearing out. Time out, stop, tell everybody what you found. I don't care if you want to say it's preliminary. It's important for people to understand that this should put a giant question mark on informed consent. We should have all been wondering about that for children in the first place because they're not reversible. I'm sorry. Going through puberty is not punishment. It is how the body grows and develops psychosexually, all of it. physically and in your brain, your cognitive ability is impacted if you do not go through your proper puberty. By proper, I mean the one you are genetically designed to go through. You want to continue to take hormones after that fact, then, I mean, you're an adult, make your decisions. No child prepubescent, remember, puberty starting earlier and earlier right now in the West. So what is prepubescent is 8 and 9 years old. 8 and 9. These kids are not capable of giving informed consent. And given the amount of influence in the schools and in culture, telling them who they are, telling them what they should feel like, telling them what their depression means if they are depressed, or even telling them they should be depressed because having a mental illness is part of their identity. I'm sorry, this research needs to be published and she needs to be held accountable. And FYI, we need to look into giving money, grants to people to do this research who happen to own gender clinics and run them. What the ever loving, I can't. So I had to jump on real quick and do a quick live because I didn't want to go through all the other, stuff of recording it and editing it. So this is rough. I apologize. No, I'm not talking about informed consent for the research. Sorry, I just saw this comment. This is not about the research. I'm talking about the children out there who either are on it right now or have been told that it's, it will help. Told that it will help. Or the people considering whether or not to ban it. And there's a lawsuit right now in front of the Supreme Court that's trying to uphold a ban. They need this information I'm going to sit on it until, I'm not going to publish it because it might be weaponized politically. Withholding it is weaponizing it. Withholding it is political. So people cannot make proper informed consent. The parents can't, the doctors can't, the court can't, and for it sure, the minor children can't without the results of this research for consideration. It is just mind-boggling. And we taxpayers paid for the research, and she's just electing to sit on it until, whenever. I'm sorry, she shouldn't be allowed. And you say, how can you use force? Taxpayer dollars. I don't know. A taxpayer dollars. And she's weaponizing this to say like, well, we're out of money anyway. Like, give me more money and I'll finish the research and then I'll publish it when I feel better about how political it is or how it might be used, which I'm sure will come after the election. But she's also using it to get more money. And like I said, she is self-interested, big proponent of the stuff. Why is this the person doing the research? Sorry, I'm done. But like I said, I just wanted to make sure I got this out as quickly as possible. Do your own research. As always, I'll drop these links down below when I'm done, when I sign off. So you can go read it, read the study. I'm not a scientist, whatever. But I know enough about puberty and what it does to the human body because I've had personal experience in dealing with teenagers who have eating disorders, which, as you may know, impacts growth and development and hormonal development. Simply not eating stops puberty. Okay. So I know what happens to the human body and cognition. I've read enough of the research about what happens to the body in puberty and when puberty is in any way, disrupted. So I feel pretty strongly that holding this back is harmful to children, period. And is political in and of itself. And I just thought I would come and share that with you. So thank you for tuning in. I think just to clarify, the medical informed consent right now is wackadoodle. It's for parents to make decisions about their children. Certainly parents have that right if they're under 18 because they're minors. Most states now, if a child is 13 or older, they can make decisions for themselves about taking certain medications. Again, that's not to say the parents have no say at all. But if they want to go behind their parents' back, they can from 13 and up, unfortunately, but certainly not 8 or 9. At 8 or 9, it's the parents who are doing the consenting. And I don't think they have informed consent with this information. And certainly even the 13-year-old children don't have it. I don't personally think a 13-year-old can make this decision, but it's not 13-year-olds who go on puberty blockers. They're already in puberty if they're not already halfway done with it. So anyway, thanks everybody. like I said, do your own homework. And I just wanted you to be aware of this. All right. Thanks a lot. Take it easy.